I'm a little tired, but we got the JOLTS job openings tomorrow, so we got to get into some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, and AMD. That's right, we added AMD this week, but we really need to talk about this and see how good we did with our overall weekend recap, and let's get into it. Now, from yesterday on the SPY, I told you I was really leaning towards this starting to head upward, especially into January 31st. Now, how this was going to head up, we talked about the scenarios that could play out because of this wonky price action in here, the little bit bigger swings. Now we're seeing that swing up to the upside, and this is what we're paying attention to. We are going to pay attention to another point of divergence on this hourly or a 30-minute chart to get us close to that negative territory before something bad could happen, and that's really how we should be looking to position ourselves. Yes, we can have these divergences, but we need that bad news. So at this point, we have the potential to roll over and maybe go into a negative trend. And I do believe we are going to see a sudden drop very, very soon. About the SPY and what we were talking about over the weekend is we could get outside of that monthly expected move before January 31st. January 31st is going to be the last day of the month of January here, and we're outside of it at this point. We do have a couple days too if we want to go higher, come back within it. 68% of the time we do that, okay? So if we do get really excited and go up like this, we could be in there could be a sudden drop in store, and then maybe we do, some kind of form like this to head down, right? Get some kind of head and shoulders like that. So we want to pay attention to this. We have a few days left in the month of January, and so we want to pay attention to any price action that is getting outside of those expected moves. Now, the important part here is on Patreon, we are actually going to be updating these January 31st, the evening of January 31st. Okay, so if you're part of my Patreon, be looking out for those new monthly ranges and make sure those are on your chart right away. The Qs are starting to do exactly what we were talking about. I think in Saturday's video, I really mentioned this. Okay, this looked like some kind of flagging, right? And we wanted to pay attention to that. It looked like the move was going to end up going higher. We are going to keep this positive trend. Why? Because MACD, we're still in positive territory. If we're able to get into negative territory, that's really where some more dramatic selling comes in. Hint, Tesla. Now, Tesla did see a bounce today, and we're going to get into that, but when it got into negative territory, it was bad news. We weren't able to get into negative territory on the Qs, and we were talking about some kind of big cup with a handle forming up in this area to then head higher. So if we wanted to go higher from the before January 31st, we'd really be looking at this scenario and say, hey, if we start to consolidate sideways here and then see some kind of hit fire move up, really be paying attention to those weekly expected moves. And speaking of expected moves, we're now trading outside of, God, I'm burping again. We're now trading outside of that monthly expected move again. Okay, so we only have a couple days left in the month of January, and this is when our kind of red flag should be hoisting pretty high up in the air. Now, what we can look forward to is some kind of divergence, right? We do have this triple divergence. Now, this divergence up here doesn't happen on the RSI at the same time, but this one does. And look how close we are to that negative territory. We're really at a point in time where we could see the flip of the coin, right? We could see this flipping over into a negative trend very quickly, but we can see this buy up for a little bit more time before that actually wants to happen. So let's be patient, wait for the signal to actually confirm, and then you can be a little more confident if it gets into that negative territory. Apple, we were talking about, we could see more of the same, right? We saw that negative trend on a 30-minute. This here is an hourly, but we overall were leaning towards a touch of this zone to then head higher. Now, this looks like some kind of flagging at this point, so we would like to see some positivity coming from this zone. Usually, once you tap into one of these zones, you want to see kind of a vertical reaction. We're not necessarily getting that at this point, but we're close to curling over in positive territory. Okay, so if we curl over, say tomorrow, we actually could see more positivity out of Apple. Come test this high, come make a new one, or we're going to set up some kind of lower high, right? There's only 3 real scenarios at this point. The one I'm really leaning towards, I really think we're going to test this level again. I really think we're going to test this level again. The only thing that's scaring me, that would be the bullish case. The bearish case is this is some kind of flagging and we actually need to head a little bit lower, create some kind of divergence down here, maybe on a 30-minute, before we actually see this bounce outside of this zone, like concrete bounce outside of this zone. So we really just need to pay attention to both sides of the coin still. But if we go look at some other charts, we're going to notice that things are way overextended and we may be getting some kind of pullback very, very soon. And I apologize if I keep on freezing, but good job on our call for Apple. We thought it would come down and touch that zone, and then we get some kind of reaction, and we're getting a little bit of a reaction. Now, Amazon is a very different story, right? We were planning on this kind of confirming, right? This divergence here on the 2 hour to confirm, and now it's like dead flat. So we need to pay attention to this in the near price action. But we didn't get fooled by this because we were talking about this on a 30-minute. I'm just going to do an hourly for now. Going to take a minute to load because my internet's being wonky. But as it does load, we're going to notice here that we were talking about how we really could flip over on Amazon, and Amazon has a very big expected range for the week based on the options, okay? So we could see a big reaction. Now, I told you here, I really believe Amazon has a little bit more upside, and guess what? We're getting that little bit more upside. So does this want to come touch our trend line before we actually see that negativity come in? Earnings is right around the corner, so Amazon is going to be a very interesting stock for the next couple of weeks, and I am slightly playing with maybe taking a trade here just because we are getting this overextension right before a big news drop, but I'm going to wait for that actual news to come out before I make a decision. Okay, and Tesla taught us a very valuable lesson, and this is even if you have all the divergences in the world, you need some good news behind them to get that pop. Okay, we need some good news behind it, and when the earnings came out as bad, this is why we don't trade around earnings. Okay, so we got two lessons here. We need good news for these divergences to pop higher, just like we need bad news for them to go lower on the other stocks. And the other one would be stay away from these stocks around earnings. We don't know the numbers they are going to produce. Now, the cool part about what Tesla is doing as of right now is if you look at this, we actually filled some kind of cup, right? So we filled a cup in this area, got a tiny handle, and now we're seeing some green. So we could actually see some positivity in Tesla very soon, maybe when we want to come fill this gap. Now, this expected move here isn't necessarily going to fill that gap, but it's something to look forward to, and maybe Tesla does want to get a solid bounce before actually heading lower and continuing this negative trend. So that's what we really want to talk about on Tesla. You can't get too positive on Tesla until at least the hourly gets into a positive trend. So if this wants to go up for a minute and get into positive territory for a sec and roll over, you're most likely going to see more pain in Tesla because this trend has been down for quite some time. Nvidia, we were talking about how this could be just some more consolidation. We like to move sideways, go up, move sideways, go up. Up here, we move sideways, go up. Now we're moving sideways again. The cool part about what happened today is we actually filled a cup on this as well. Okay, so as of right now, we've filled this little cup in here. If we create some kind of small handle, we actually could see more positivity out of Nvidia. And that's pretty crazy considering how far we've come, right? We just went up from 500 all the way up to this 628 area. And that's pretty crazy because we did that pretty quick. So we want to pay attention to Nvidia in the near price action. Maybe we form some kind of subtle divergence here, but notice this divergence is kind of like the one over here. So we are close to that negative territory, and on this one, we might even be even closer to negative territory. But in this case over here, we did not get that bad news. So this is why it's important to be patient. Wait for that bad news to come out and position yourself correctly. And if you want to get a little bit zealous beforehand and try to take a trade, just have your stops in place, okay? We don't want you losing a bunch. We just want you having those stops in place. That way, if it goes the wrong direction on you, you're out pretty quick. So right now, I'm just seeing this cup here. If we form some kind of handle, we could head a little bit higher. Is that going to create a divergence that gets us down into this negative territory with some bad news? Our last stock, but we're going to go into the VIX for a moment, is the AMD. Okay, so AMD here, we have not completed this cup. Okay, you can see at the end of the day, we might be trying to make that move, get this to curl up in positive territory, create some kind of divergence up here that gets you into that area where we can go into a negative trend. So the important part here is we're right next to that negative territory. So if this wants to roll down right now and get into negative territory, we could start to see that negative trend come into play. But if we actually curl back up, closing this full cup here, get some kind of handle, we actually could head a little bit higher. Okay, so at this point, I'm not necessarily leaning towards AMD creating a new high. I really think it's at least going to test this one before January 31st. So I'm really paying attention to AMD. I was looking at it all day at work, and it really was just kind of not doing much. So if this wants to complete this cup and get a handle, though, we could actually see some positivity, get a divergence right before we get possibly some bad news on Wednesday. The VIX, you guys know I like my 30-minute divergences on the VIX, and you'll notice that we do have this slight divergence on the MACD, and we also have that slight divergence or flatness, really, of the RSI. Okay, so we have those at the same time. This just tells me, hey, let me draw a little trend up in here. Maybe I can draw that a little better. Let me draw a trend up in here, and if we do get some kind of bounce, what if that trend breaks and we actually head lower? Fill this gap down here, right? So we could fill some kind of gap. But I really do like my 30-minute divergences. And so I'm thinking that we're probably going to fill this gap, if not come down and touch this area down here one more time. We really called that really well last week. We were just stating, I think it was the week before last week, that there were divergences in here, but I wouldn't count on them. I really think we wanted to head down for a test. Volatility comes back in, and now we'll have to see, is this able to break down, maybe create some kind of higher low, actually? That would be a very bullish thing for the VIX, right? So I think you have a good shot of filling this gap, or maybe even coming down and testing this area one more time before we see that extreme volatility come back in. Really paying attention to the VIX over the next couple days, and I'll keep updating you, especially on Patreon, but every single night of this week, so make sure to subscribe. I hope I don't freeze a ton during this, but the main takeaway here is we're starting to get back up into those areas. We really did a good job this weekend of kind of deciding, hey, this is still a positive trend. There's not a lot of negative news coming out on Monday, and we really need negative news behind these divergences to get us to flip the script, get us into negative territory, and really start those negative trends. So this is what I'm paying attention to, and the fact that we're starting to move up right before a big announcement, meaning the Fed rate decision on January 31st, we should have our red flags held up high. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, subscribing. You guys are fantastic. We got a few new people to the Patreon, so thank you guys so much for joining, and feel free to message me on there as well. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I hope you have all the luck in the world trading tomorrow. Peace.